Reality Check with Craig Price.
Oh, right. Sorry.
I'm an idiot. 4 minutes in and I'm already wrong. I'm like a monkey. Hello, look at me. Craig, shut up.
Hey, I need you guys to do these things.
You're like A Beautiful Mind. I'm more like Forrest Gump. So it's... Welcome to Reality Check with Craig Price. I am your host, the aforementioned Craig Price. And I want to thank people for listening and remind people that they can go to the website, realitycheckpodcast.com, and sign up for the newsletter. I haven't decided if that newsletter is going to come out on a weekly basis with every episode, if it's going to come out on a bi-monthly or a monthly situation where it'll talk about who has been on the show or who is coming on the show. If you have any suggestions, email me, Craig at speakercraigprice.com. But go to the website, realitycheckpodcast.com, where you can sign up for the newsletter. You can sign up for the iTunes, subscribe to the iTunes. You can join the Facebook page. You can find us on Twitter. Now let's get on to our guest, Robert Bradford. Robert is a strategy master and guru. And it's important that I had him on the show because I feel that strategy is one of the most overlooked aspects of business, especially people who are not familiar with business and they jump in. I know a lot of people are starting new businesses and just getting involved in business, and they don't really understand what's involved, and they don't really plan properly. I mean, I was a person who never really thought I'd be in business. I thought I would be in show business, which is completely different than regular business. I thought I'd have an agent, and the agent would get me management, and the management would find me deals and gigs. And then I'd have a publicist who would market and put out press releases and do all that stuff. But alas, that did not happen. As a lot of you who have not seen my sitcom because it was not filmed or televised or scripted or even committed to paper ever happened. Things don't always work out. And so sometimes people go into business not really ever wanting to be a business person. I never certainly wanted to be a business person, but I had to get real jobs. And in doing those jobs, I was promoted and made managers and running companies and making sure finances. And so I learned a lot of these skills over time. I had wished I had gone someplace and like school. I went to school for film studies. I wish I had gone to school for my MBA like Robert did, because then it would have helped me. And so I had to learn all this stuff on the fly. And so for me, strategy is this weird mythical thing that really doesn't exist. It's like a cloud. I don't really know what it is. I've seen people talk about it, but I don't really know how to apply it or apply it properly. And I think a lot of people are in the same situation. I think it's a lot of the if you build it, they will come situation, which is not true. Very rarely if you build something, people will just show up. If you build something, you have to tell people about it. You've got to build the road to whatever you've built. So you build it, they won't come. So you build the road to it. And then you have to make directions to the road to it. Then you have to advertise the directions to the road to it. There is much more involved than just being the best you can possibly be. You do have to be the best. If you're a cupcake person, make the best cupcakes. But you got to make sure that you have the capacity to make the cupcakes that you need, that you've got the distribution, that you've got the advertising, the marketing, the financing in place. Do you need a loan? Do you not need a loan? What kind of should you incorporate? All these situations that you need to think about ahead of time, which a lot of people don't. And so they're neck deep in whatever they are. And so the great thing about Robert is he believes that no matter where you are in your process, you can start strategizing immediately. And you should be always putting some sort of strategy in mind. And that's why I have him on the show, because I want to share Robert with you. He's a great resource. He's always great to see. Every time I see him about 3 times a year, maybe 2 or 3 times a year at conventions or meetings and things. And he's always been a great resource for me, personally and professionally. And I wanted to share that resource with you. So let me give you Robert Bradford. You like the snow and everything. I mean, because you're from Michigan, so.
Yeah, I like the snow if I can play in it. Snow's fun to play in. It's no question about it.
Okay. Well, like I said, my mom's from Vermont, so St. Johnsbury. I grew up in New Hampshire, so it's the same. I mean, it's the same thing upside down.
Right.
So it's a lot of cold snow. People like to think, oh, it's beautiful there in the wintertime, and like it is for a moment. Then all the leaves fall off. It's gray sticks. It's gray sky. All the cars' exhaust turn it to gray snow.
Yeah. So and then you get mud season, and that's no fun.
Right.
But then the summer is gorgeous.
Oh, it's baseball season is perfect.
Yes. Exactly.
Maybe April's a little sucky, but once you start really getting into May through September, it's beautiful.
Gorgeous. Yeah.
So you're Justin Well, huh?
What's that?
You're just the
yeah.
The people don't really bother you too much.
There aren't so many of them, so I like that part.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm here with Robert Bradford, who's the master strategist, and I'm not sure you planned on ever being in Vermont, which is kind of ironic.
When I got out of grad school, I went to grad school in New Hampshire, actually, and I said to myself I could probably live in Ann Arbor, Michigan, or Burlington, Vermont, and so I'm pretty close to Burlington.
Man, you really shot for the stars on that.
Yeah. Well, I had some reasons. There were some things I wanted. I wanted to be in a college town, and I wanted to be in a place where I liked the weather, where it did get cold in the winter and had nice summers. There are some other things I liked, but Vermont's different.
And so you started off. You said you were to school in New Hampshire, but it was not Dartmouth, was it?
Yeah, it was.
It was Dartmouth.
Yeah, I got my MBA at Dartmouth.
Because I'm thinking, why am I thinking Cornell with you?
I went to Princeton undergraduate.
Oh, Princeton! I know you're a big Princeton person.
And then Amos Tuck School.
It's Ivy League. It's all that Ivy. That's why I'm just lumping it all together.
Yeah. It's Ivy League schools. Right?
And the biggest thing of me is going to speak at Cornell, though I couldn't actually attend it. So maybe that's what it is. It's my desperate plea to find a connection on an educational level with you.
Yeah. It's just one of those things. It's the games you play when you're say in high school or in college.
Yeah. So you just got the MBA.
Yeah.
And then you went where?
After I got the MBA, I immediately went into my consulting and training business.
So you went right in on your own?
Yes.
No screwing around?
Yeah, because I'd left Wall Street. I knew I didn't want to do that.
Well, that means you went to Wall Street. Did you intern there or something? Or?
No, actually, I got a job there pretty much right out of college as an IT manager. And just because I knew people and had some interesting ideas, I got a job working on derivative design and doing kind of rocket science work at Chemical Bank.
Yeah, that's the thing about you, is that you don't deal with the lowbrow stuff.
I don't know what you mean by that.
Exactly, because it's too stupid for me to say that. You deal with actual, concepts where you need to have some sort of IQ.
No, it's all pretty simple stuff.
No, yeah, see, that's a beautiful mind. You're like a beautiful mind. I'm more like Forrest Gump. So but yet we're both Oscar-winning movies.
Exactly.
So that's
Okay.
but that's why because you're a strategist, and for a lot of people, I don't think they even understand strategy. It's like, I will just plan, which is part of strategy.
Right.
But and then they end up just doing little things instead of actually making give me an example of a speaker.
Right.
In general, because we're both in the speaking version of a good starting strategy. You're just out of school
For a speaker,
or maybe they just had a career and maybe they did some speaking, or they're a salesperson and they had to speak in front of groups before, and they're like, well, I want to try this for a living.
Yeah. I think it's a very rare speaker that should start speaking right out of school. I think it's important to have a perspective and to really develop something that that you're going to love knowing more about every year of your life for the rest of your life.
Yeah, because in my experience, I've met communication majors.
Yes.
And I'm sure you have too, who are fresh out, and I'm not old yet. I mean, though I officially have more gray in my beard than I did yesterday, as far as the ratio. Right. I think I've tipped over the ratio, the tipping point.
It's all downhill.
I'm officially
here.
Old, yeah. And the hairline is rapidly receding, which I've come to terms with. My wife has not yet.
But you can still comb it, which I can't. So.
Well, I think you made the Bruce Willis move.
Yeah.
Which you look great.
Thanks.
I mean, it's the Bruce Willis move is a preemptive strike, and I think it takes some bravery, because a lot of guys like my dad will comb over. He's 60, he still has a comb over.
Yeah.
It's 4 horrible little meek little threads. I call it Atmos hair.
Well, yeah, what?
You can see the planet's surface. It's just like a cloud. And then my grandfather-in-law, you take his hat off, his comb over will whip in the wind, and it looks like an ice cream cone fell on his head.
And that's just dorky looking.
Of course.
Yeah. And it's clear you're trying to pretend, whereas when you shave it all off, you're embracing your destiny.
Well, that's what I mean. You understand it's a strategy.
Yes.
It's like I can either look like that dork with the comb over, but. And like I said, I appreciate the fact you did that. I'm probably going to be there in about 8 years. I'll be 45 then. I think at that point.
That's about right.
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah, okay. This is also great radio for bald people. I'm glad David Newman's not here. But these fresh-faced kids, they really are 22, 23, 24.
Yeah.
They're getting their communications degree. They're coming out, and what they're really doing is they think that I can speak. They don't really, like you said, they haven't found their perspective yet.
Yes.
And so what they end up doing is, I call it aggregating. What they do, which is a big word. I'm using the big words for you.
Yeah.
They just take the best top 5 books, kind of wedge crap.
Yeah, they'll take one of my books, read it, and say, okay,
well, I don't know.
Now I know all about this stuff.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
And how
take
many
one of your books.
Well, no one's taken one of my books. My book was met with overwhelming indifference.
Yeah, keep trying.
Yeah, that's. But
you get enough books, and you're still an author. So.
Oh, I know. I'm an author forever.
Yes.
I mean, I wrote a legitimate book, and
right.
it actually turned out well.
Yes.
No one wants it. But it's a very well written book, and it's amusing and
it is. It's very amusing.
And did you actually? That's right. You bought. I think you actually bought a copy.
I think I did. Yes.
Oh, I feel bad now. I think you bought it early, which I certainly appreciate. But their strategy is, I'm just going to kind of mold stuff, and that's not really a strategy. It's a tactic.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you say, since obviously you want them to start a little later on, you want to go to work somewhere.
Right. Well, the key with strategy is you start wherever you are, and you ask yourself, where do I want to be in the future?
How far?
That strategy, and there's no set period.
Okay.
I like to work with the foreseeable future. So that for most people is probably the 5-10 year frame. I couldn't tell you what's going to happen 10 years from now.
Well, no, we may not even be here.
I mean, think back 10 years ago. 10 years ago is 2001. We just had 9/11. Did you think that we would have had this great economic growth followed by a really trashy recession like we did? No, I don't think anybody would have thought that. Nobody could have predicted the way the world was going to turn out. And you can't predict that far, but you can probably predict 3 to 5 years out. So what you want to do is you want to set a post out and say, I want to be roughly here. And it doesn't have to be an exact spot where you're going to be, but it has to be a direction you're going. Strategy is about direction. The word comes from ancient Greek, strata, strategos, what generals do, or strata, which was actually a tool that was used for navigating ships. So
see, I told you he was smart.
It's setting, there you go. It's setting direction for you. It's a course and direction is what strategy is all about. And the line between that and tactics is a little fuzzy. I can look at some things and say there's no way that's a strategy. When people in the business world talk about, sneaky tricks and, cheating on their taxes or something like that, and tactical stuff like that, it can make you a little more money this year, but it's not a strategy because it's not going to get you where you want to be 5 years down the pike. And it has a finite lifespan, whereas good strategy doesn't have a finite lifespan. It keeps on getting better and better.
It evolves.
Yeah, it evolves, and really good strategy is built on a characteristic we all have as human beings, which is we learn. And good strategy is about thinking of your business, whether it's a one-person business or a 100-person business. It's thinking about your business as a learning enterprise. And every speaker I know who has grown to be a really great speaker has learned during their life. And I don't care whether you're talking about, a phenomenally successful person like Mark Victor Hansen, whose Chicken Soup for the Soul was probably rejected 75 times before he self-published it, or Jeffrey Gitomer, who just learned a lot about not just speaking, not just selling, but also writing. He learned a lot about the book business in order to succeed, and that's really where he found his success as a speaker. And anybody you can think of who's become phenomenally successful has viewed their business as a succession of lessons about different parts of how you succeed in our business.
So I think that's the last thing they think about is, I always say this, is that they come in here with money in their eyes,
mm-hmm.
and they go, oh, this is going to be a great idea. I speak well at church.
Right.
And everyone says, oh, you're very uplifting. You should be a motivational speaker. They watch Anthony Robbins on TV. He's making millions of dollars, or perceived huge success. Even if they see a middle, like someone like me who's not a motivational speaker, but they get up there, everyone thinks, I'm making millions of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was in Puerto Rico, and they thought my wife looked like an actress on TV. Like, I'm married to an actress on TV, and yet here I am speaking in front of this small industrial association.
Right.
Like, I couldn't live off my network television wife's series money.
Right.
So I have to come here. So I think the perception of just jumping into the speaking world is so much easier, and they don't really start with a plan.
No, they don't. They just say, well, people will pay me to speak, and they go out and they say, well, what will people pay me to speak about? And it's good to think about what people will pay you to speak about, but you also need to think about what you really want to be an expert in, because I think the real value in speaking comes from expertise. There are a lot of people out there with good speaking skills, the communications majors you're talking about. All the wannabe actors in Los Angeles can speak pretty well. But there are far fewer people who can speak well, who also have an expertise and a perspective that is interesting enough to listen to and valuable enough to pay for.
And you do, this is why what impresses me. What I always like to see you at when I go to the conventions, or if you come to Houston where I am, or where if I'm in the neighborhood I'll come see you, is because you must have some sort of outline, but maybe not. You get up there and you just grab people. Not literally, because you'd probably get sued, but maybe sometimes. I think I've seen you grab one or two people.
Yeah.
And you sit them down, and then you just ask them questions, and then you very nicely, and sometimes not so nicely, rip apart their strategy right there on the spot, which a speech, a keynote situation is not normal.
Yeah.
You are truly, and you're not winging it, but you are winging it. Winging it means you have no idea what's going to happen next. But because of your expertise.
Yes. And I've done it in front of 1,000 people, and it's nerve-wracking.
That's what I was going to ask you, is how do you feel when you get on there and you don't know I wing it a little bit. I have an outline, and to get from point A to point B, there's a lot of room for me, because I get bored easy, and I have no memory, which is kind of almost like a serial killer. I have no memory, and I don't care.
Yes.
But if I go in and do the same, that's why I can do the same speech, but to the same group. I could do it 2 times in a row, and it's going to be completely different.
Right.
Only that's because that's a strength, but it's also a weakness.
Right.
I mean, they want Coca-Cola, and I give them, Diet Zero. It still tastes like Coca-Cola. They still get the soda. They still enjoy the drink, but it's not exactly the same every time. And it's not going to be Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola. When you do it, it's 100% completely different.
It's always different. It's always built on the audience. And there's always a spark of excitement and tension there, because I don't know what's going to happen, and the audience doesn't know what's going to happen either.
When was the first time you did that? Did you start off the very first time? I can't believe the first time you ever spoke.
I'll tell you what. When I started teaching seminars I taught the 2-day seminars for various universities around the country. For many years, and just settled in. Now it's mostly just Michigan State University. But when I started doing the seminars, I actually wrote out scripts for almost everything I did. Every story I told, I would tape it, I would write it up, and after I'd done it probably 100 or 200 times, I started to play with stuff. I started to play with ideas.
So you waited that long?
Yeah, and then I started to realize that having fun with the audience was really important to me. In fact, I tried to, and when I first got into speaking, when I joined NSA, I thought the model of the motivational speaker with doing the same speech over and over again, that was the only way to do it. And I really sucked at that.
Yes. I mean, not that you did. I'm saying I agree with you.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons I couldn't succeed in acting, is I couldn't remember my lines.
Yeah.
I'm an ad-lib machine. I'm not an improver, because that's different. I'm an ad-lib machine. I make we had dinner earlier. I'm just making snide comments that come out of my head.
Right.
Thankfully, I've had a lot of practice at that, so even though they're completely original to me, I've never heard them before. I'll hit and miss.
Yes.
But I'll hit more than I'll miss. And to see you do that with your expertise, it's good to know that you walked down that road where for the first 200, which is a lot. I can't imagine me, like the first 20. I think the first one I did, right in the middle, only because I forgot. I probably just kind of did the monkey dance, I call it, when you forget.
Yeah.
So, but are you ever worried before you even start that you're just going to run into some brick wall?
No, and
probably not now, but
it's probably a dysfunctional thing about me. I'm a little bit reckless, and
which is ironic for a strategy guy.
No, strategy is inherently reckless. Good tactics are about never making mistakes and always doing everything right. When you do your day-to-day job, you should do everything right. When you get up in front of an audience, you should speak well and do it the best you can. But strategically, you need to give yourself an opportunity to make mistakes, because the growth and the learning always happens when you make the mistakes. And so you've got these things that kind of fight with each other. You want to do well, but you also want to give yourself permission to make mistakes. Companies that innovate, people that innovate, do so because they're playing with things. They view the world not as this set, cast in stone thing where there's true and false. They view reality as being pliable and made of Play-Doh, because it is for human beings. We're a species that can mold the world the way we want it to be molded, which might be good or bad depending upon your philosophical.
Right.
outlook.
You could mold it into a horrible death machine a la Hitler.
Right.
Or you could mold it into a inspirational, opportunity for freedom like Martin Luther King.
Exactly. And so, you have the people who really make a difference in the world, have a strategy where they say, this is what I'm going to play with and this is what I'm going to mold. And whenever I work with, leaders of any sort, whether it's, again, a one-person business or a, Fortune 500 business, I'm always looking for the people who view the world as something they can mold, because those are the people who are going to make the choices and make a difference.
So basically building on the wreckage of failures. That's how you succeed, is off the wreckage.
Right. Well, I mean,
because you learn what happened.
Right.
And so sifting through the ashes of whatever went wrong. Because I like to explain it because I talk about failure a lot. Because that is a negative thing that happens to you, and it's a very important negative thing that happens to you. But you're sifting through the ashes because it's hard to figure out what's going right until something breaks down.
Yes.
And I think because you're assuming when things are going right, you make a lot of assumptions. You're assuming I'm a charismatic person who's very funny, so they love me because of that. May not be the case. Once you run into a group that doesn't think you're funny or charismatic, then you've got to find out what's actually the most important piece.
Yes.
And that only works. You only find that out most of the time when it breaks down.
Yes, absolutely.
And so you actually kind of encourage some of your clients to take that risk.
Yes.
As a strategy.
Yes.
Okay.
What you want is cheap failures.
Right. You want livable failures.
Right.
Not the Hindenburg failure.
Exactly. We don't want the Hindenburg. We want the little thing squeaking when you turn it on or something.
You hit the curb a little bit. You bounce up on the curb when you're parking in parallel parking. That's okay.
Yeah.
But that's also calculated risk then, to some degree.
Yes, very much. And it's risk where what you learn from the mistakes, what you learn from finding out that something doesn't work, is actually quite valuable in a way that makes you different from the people around you that you might be competing with. So you want to learn things that other people look at and say, Craig's learned something that other people haven't learned. Craig,
if only I could sell that.
3, 4, 5 years down the road, you want people to say, there's something to what Craig's saying, that he's got this insight, that he's learned these things that other people aren't telling me these things, and yet they clearly have a ring of truth to them. And sifting through the wreckage, that's one way of looking at it.
Yeah, that's me though.
Yeah.
I'm a wreckage sifter.
Right.
I'm a dump picker.
Well, it sets you apart, and that's brilliant, because everybody else is going all positive and touchy-feely and fluffy bunny, and you're like,
Well, and that's because, like I said, you got to go with what you're good at as a strategy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my strategy is I've got to kind of show that people's perspective has value.
Yes.
I think in the corporate world, for me, I noticed in the corporate world, oh, you're being negative was a nice way of saying shut up and do what we tell you.
Right.
We have a plan, and you have an idea that interrupts our plan.
Right.
And they don't want their plan interrupted.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's someone saying, hey, if it's that guy going, there's an iceberg, at this point.
Yeah.
If you can go a little farther south, it'd be really good. Oh, shut up, we're fine. This is the best boat in the world. What the hell's wrong with you, Craig? Go away. And then next thing you know, I'm there with Molly Brown going, man, it's freezing out here.
Yes.
But everybody else is in the water dying.
Exactly.
I've been with Molly Brown.
Yes.
So that's where my expectation. So it's I think that they need to be a little more open to people. Hey, this guy, even though he's maybe a jerk, maybe he's a little grumpy, maybe he doesn't know how to present it well. But that's been my strategy, is to try to show a different perspective, at least be open to other people's perspective.
Right.
Doesn't mean they're right.
Well, it's the other side of, I mentioned that, good strategy is a lot about recklessness. What you're saying is you also have to be aware that sometimes recklessness is truly reckless.
That's how you get killed. Yeah, Evel Knievel, reckless guy, broke every bone in his body.
Right.
I mean, you know.
Exactly.
So I think that a lot of people, you know, when they strategize, I don't really think they go far enough. I think they just kind of, it's more like goal setting, but not like real. They have no idea how they're going to get the goal. They just like, oh, I want to be this person.
Yes.
Okay, how?
Yes.
They don't think about the how.
Yes.
And then they sit and stew. And I think a lot of people come into this business and, you know, jeopardize their future doing that.
Or you know, the thing I see a lot is that sort of positive thinking. Well, I'm going to sell millions more next year than I did this year.
Yeah.
That's great, but you have to sort of turn the tables, put yourself in the customer's shoes and say, why as a customer am I going to be more inclined to give you my hard-earned cash this year than I was last year? Now, there might be a good reason for it, but you better understand what that reason is, and you better think about what have you learned about that reason why people are going to give you money.
Yeah, you've got to find out what's working for you, but you also and what's not working for you.
Right.
You got to cut the cord. It's like you know when the people fall off of Everest, they're dangling, and they got that one poor son of a bitch at the bottom going, I think I'm going to die. Well, cut the rope because everybody else can't go with them.
Right.
So sometimes you have to do that.
Yeah.
Other times you're the guy up at the top going, I'm going to try to drag everybody up with me if I can.
Yeah.
But I know that you started the consulting on your own, which is kind of like I said, you just started right out of the gate.
Well, no, I did it. I did it with my father because he had a seminar business.
Oh, okay.
And he'd been doing it for about 7 years as a solo practice.
So you had an idea of what you were getting into.
Well, what I wanted to do was grow the business and hire more people and make it bigger than just him. And yeah, I knew what I was getting into, and there were some things that he knew about the marketing of the business that were very important. And he had a very good framework laid out because, you know, we'd done strategic planning. You know, he ran our family's business for a number of years, and so he'd done strategic planning in our manufacturing business before he sold it.
And where were you growing up? Where was this when you were?
I was in Western Michigan.
Okay, so you're definitely a Michigan guy.
Grew up there. Yep.
Yeah, okay, so the cold weather doesn't bother you.
No, not at all.
Economic depressions don't seem to bother you. I mean,
they bother me.
I mean, I mean, it's like, you know, housing prices in New England have never been good.
Right.
When the world has, I mean, the country has a recession. New England is in recession for an extra 5 years.
Right.
Easy.
Yes.
You know, just like Cleveland.
Yes.
And then so Michigan's always historically for the last 30 years has been a lot slower.
It's had ups and downs.
Yeah, but their ups haven't been as high, and their lows have been a lot lower.
Yes.
And right now, I mean, I feel bad for them right now. They're really getting a hit.
Yeah.
So your dad had this great business that you thought, well, this would be perfect for me, and you just got the MBA and was able to, you know, attach a couple extra things to it because he had the marketing thing.
Yeah.
I'm not I had David Newman on here. The marketing thing is not my deal.
Yeah.
If I had a marketing person, I'd probably be great.
I love marketing. So.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. he says with smug. Yeah. It's difficult.
Yeah.
But I don't find it fun. I find it difficult. But you market with you write like anybody's business.
I write a lot.
How much do you write a week? Not necessarily publish, not necessarily put up on a newsletter but just you fly a lot. So I mean, I'm sure you probably have lots of time you sit around and not sit around, but you're like at an airport waiting, maybe jot a couple notes down, maybe on a long flight.
I would say in a productive week I'm writing 2,000 or 3,000 words, and an unproductive week I'm just writing 500 words.
Oh my! And
that's not that much though. I mean, 2,000 or 3,000 words you can do in a couple hours if you really put your mind to it.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. You got to really. I mean, I with my book I struggled constantly because with writing it's about inflating.
Yes.
And for me I'm a compressor.
Right.
The people pay me to get to the point.
Right.
So when I had to write the book, it was just difficult to start getting that thing bigger. I kept on getting notes back from the editor and from the publisher. Oh, we need about 6 more pages. 6 more pages?
You just slice it into more bits and explain it a little bit more.
I know, and you get a little redundant. And I was able to find a couple tricks that made it so it wasn't redundant for me. But how is it something you've always done? Is it just you're just a writer?
Yeah,
were you writing when you were a kid, and you just keep writing and writing and writing?
I mean, I think I was probably 11 years old. I started just writing in a notebook, And I would just, it was one of my hobbies. I would just write. I would write things that I observed and thought about.
Kids eating bugs for nickels at 11, so you're writing. That's awesome. I mean, I can appreciate that. But isn't that how you really kind of made your mark, was through your articles and through your books?
I would say that, the real turning point for me probably was when we published the first Simplified Strategic Planning book in 1999. I'd been doing some articles and doing some speaking and doing the seminars, and we had the manual that was mostly the work of my father from our family's business, and then some work he'd done after he sold the business when he started the seminars. But Simplified Strategic Planning really set us apart quite a bit. It was a very successful book, thousands and thousands and thousands of copies, which is great for a business book. And then I just got into writing whatever I could whenever I could. So, I started writing articles. I started blogging a few years back. And just any time I have a chance to write, I want to write.
Well, like I said, it's obviously paid off for you. And it continues to. It's a good way, because now you have a company, which is called
Center for Simplified Strategic Planning.
Yeah, I want to get you. I'm plugging you away.
There you go. Yep.
And what I find interesting is you take CEOs.
Yes.
And hire them.
Yes. All of my people are former CEOs.
So where do you find are you stealing them? Are you headhunting and just plucking them? Are you finding people that are desperate for change? They've achieved a lot in their individual field, and they just decide, well, let's try something a little different.
Some of them were classmates in business school.
Oh yeah. You Ivy Leaguers stick together. That's one thing I know about you.
Clients.
Clients.
One, Barry Wolfson, was a client of mine here in Atlanta. He was a client for 6 years. We grew his company from about 10 or 15 million to 100 million. Brilliant guy, and I always kept asking him why he kept bringing me in, because I thought he was really smart. And he said, Robert, when I do strategic planning, I can either wear the CEO hat or I can wear the strategic planner hat. And I figured I wasn't going to wear both hats, and I better hire the best person I could find to wear the other one. And then we've had some other people that we just found randomly, word of mouth, networking, whatever. And they've all been great. They're very bright people. They're the people we have working for us. They're good in front of a crowd. They teach the seminar well. They do great consulting work. And
do you have like a set seminar, or do you kind of give them a little leeway? Because I've always been interested, because there's the Fred Pryor thing out there,
right?
And there's the landmark stuff. And people told me I should try some of that, and I can't do other people. It's just like in comedy. I can't do other people's material,
right?
Because it doesn't feel real to me.
Yeah.
I'm not saying the material's bad. It's just not mine.
Right.
And if I do it, I'm going to do it my way anyways, and it's not going to. And at one point, I'm going to say something that'll get upset. The Fred Pryor people will be upset.
You know what, we take them, and what we have done historically is when we hire a new person, we take them around with us for about a year, and they teach seminars with us and watch us work with clients, and they learn the framework, and there is a set framework.
Oh, sure.
And they learn our stories, but then what we encourage them to do is come up with their own stories, because you're right, nobody's going my stories aren't going to work as well for anybody else but me.
Unless you get like hire actors.
Right.
And even then.
Yeah.
They're actors.
Yeah.
God. Ugh.
And for heaven's sake, they're my stories. There are details in them that make them so real and vivid when I'm telling the story in front of an audience that somebody else can tell the story, but it doesn't have that ring of authenticity that your own story will.
And most of your clients are large corporations. No, are they individuals? I thought
No. Most of them, I would say, are companies that have somewhere between 50 and 500 employees.
Okay, so they're almost large companies. They're on the cusp.
Yeah, there are a handful that are larger.
Okay. And I know you travel a lot, and so when you sit down with them, what are the key things? I mean, obviously what they think their long-term strategy is.
Right.
But that may not always be a good thing. If people need help, it's because they may not be pointing in the right direction that they think they should be in.
Right.
They think, oh, this is how we should do it. Then well, if you have a way, why are you bringing in Robert?
Yeah.
So what is your process without, giving away trade secrets?
Right.
And not that there's, I don't think anybody's listening right now, but but of the 4 people who are not my parents.
Right.
what kind of process do you start down? What's one of the first like 3 steps that you would sit down with someone with?
Well, we have 3 basic steps we go through, which is we want to figure out where we are, where we want to go, and how we're going to get there. And in doing that, the most important thing that we want to do is we want to figure out, who you are. What is this organization? What is this business? What are its characteristics that set it apart from everybody else in the world? What are you good at? What do you like being good at? And what are the things that we do that are really valuable to our customers? What do customers say, like, that one thing you do, that's what I'm willing to spend money on?
And how do you, like for a smaller company that's kind of, they've got their product, they're just starting out, and they may not even actually know what the client, I mean, they know they have a successful product, they're starting to grow a little bit, but they may not know exactly what that is.
Right.
What is the secret ingredient that actually people are choosing them over?
Right.
How do you go about trying to locate that?
Well, I try to use a scientific method. I try to set up experiments where we say, okay, we think it's this product. Now, is it the packaging? Is it the color of the product? Is it some feature of the product? Let's try selling the product with and without that feature. Let's try different price points. Let's try
Thank you for the plug.
Yeah, there you go. Different, but what you want to do is you want to give people choices and then watch the choices that they make. Because there's no way, all the market research in the world, all the analysis and planning in the world isn't going to give you the answer that your customers will when they're putting their hard-earned money on the barrel and saying, that's the one I want.
And that's part of the risk that you're talking about.
And that's where you have to experiment and be willing to look at the failures and say, and you can't just look at a failure and say, what did we learn from that? Well, it sucks. Well, of course failure sucks. But did you learn that there's something that people will pay for and something else that people will not pay for? And that's the kind of thing you want to look for. For example, price testing. You want to offer people basically the same product at different prices and see which they pick under different circumstances.
So you set, we'll say it's a large corporation that sells widgets.
Yes.
Because that's always good.
Yes.
Isn't that what they do in
widgets? In business school? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of widgets, which I've never actually seen a real widget.
Yes, that was my sister's nickname when she was little. So widget.
Yeah, you guys are definitely geeks. Definitely strategy geeks if you're calling her widget.
Yeah.
And I bet you were thinking about Princeton from like 9.
No, 12.
12?
Yeah.
Okay. 11 years old, you started writing, and then you went, you know what? This would be good for the Princeton Review.
Well, I'll tell you the thing that's really funny, though, is that I started thinking about Princeton because somebody told me that chicks really dig guys who go to Princeton. So.
Oh, who lied to you? Who lied to you? That's always what they tell the Ivy League guys, because they're like, oh, yeah. They love smart, funny guys. No, they don't. Smart, funny guys, they appreciate smart, funny guys.
Yeah, they do appreciate.
Yeah, but they won't sleep with them.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just me because I look like Steve Buscemi as we talked about. So you, like I said, you got the widgets.
Yeah.
Now, are you shipping $9.99 widgets, like in price, $9? Say they're cheap widgets,
right?
Because let's be honest, a widget sounds cheap,
right?
$9.99 widgets. We're sending them to the Northwest region, then we're sending $10.99 widgets somewhere. Or, how are you doing that?
There are a lot of different ways you can do it.
That's what I mean.
Right. You could do it geographically, and I've done that. The best time I ever saw this happen was geographically. We had one region of the country that was just sucking wind. They were losing money hand over fist, and they wanted to pull out of the region. And I said, hey, listen, instead of just shutting it down, why don't we try selling the same product for 20% more, because we're only losing like 10%. So it'd be more profitable than any other region in the country if we were getting 20% more. And they did, and they didn't lose any sales. So it was the most profitable region of the country. And the only reason they were willing to do that was they were about to pull out of that region anyway. Right. So they just didn't care about the sales. And that led me to an axiom that I think is absolutely true. You make the most money on the customers you really don't care if you lose.
Yeah. Because what I do is, especially if it's a gig that I know is going to be bad, because there's certain audiences that are good for speakers.
Mm-hmm.
Which ones are home run hitters and which ones you're going to have to slog through and really work hard at.
Right.
And I think the client wants it easy for you, because the easier it is for you, the better you're going to be, so to speak.
Right.
A lot of people are like, I want a challenge. No, you don't. You say you want a challenge, but when you get up there and you've got to start talking. And so
I just want to phone this in.
No, you don't want to phone it in, but you don't want to have to sit there and try to squeeze their attention span out of them. You want to go in there, they're psyched up, and then you want to take that and lift it higher.
Yes.
Not necessarily, dig a hole that they're under, uncover where they are, brush the dirt off, and then pull them out of the earth.
Yeah, that's harder.
Oh, that's extremely hard.
Yeah.
And so you've got, and I'm completely just making stuff up now. But as you go along, you've got the widgets, you just don't care. But what I do is, like, if I know I don't want to do this deal,
Right.
just give them the high fee.
Right.
And I don't back down.
Right.
Only because, I'll submit a proposal that I know is just awful. I'm like, they're making me submit a 8-page proposal with several breakouts and all this stuff, and it's going to be a lot of work and very little return, and I'm probably not even going to get picked because I don't fit their needs.
Why do you do those?
Well, I have a lot of time on my hands.
Oh. You could be watching TV and playing on your Wii.
I could. Well, hey, I could be, but then I got to explain to my wife, what did you do today? Oh, I was playing with my Wii all morning. That's going to be bad, doesn't it? It's horrible. It's actually, a Wii is something you do after you drink a lot. But no, I fill out the proposals. I mean, I actually, I have one on my email right now. I'm not going to do because I know it's not a good idea. But I'll submit those ones, especially if I can do it really quick and throw them out there at the high level and not back down on it, because my mind, it's what's the lowest price I will go without resenting my clients.
Right.
If I had to. I mean, what I would like to do is I want to make sure I start with my level, like whatever I give. And if they don't have the budget, they don't have the budget, and I'll work with them a little bit. Because, in my situation, I'm not overwhelmed with offers, so it's not like I can throw this one away because another one's going to come down the pike.
Yeah, but when you get one of those, you should go for the highest price you can do without feeling really embarrassed.
That's I don't feel embarrassed where I am anyways.
Then you should go higher.
Yeah, I know I should, but they're crying. I talk to them about what they've done, and I find out what their real price range is.
Yeah.
And I've lifted up some, and I had to bring some down. But if I really don't want to do it,
yeah.
But I got to feed my family.
Right.
I put that high price on and just hope that they don't pick me.
Right. And
of course, half the time they do.
Right.
Which is good because now I'm getting a full fee, so I don't feel so bad. And I don't want that to.
Well, wait. If you hope you don't get them, you should be getting double fee for those.
Yeah. Well, I'm not in the position to be able to turn down, my largest fee.
Okay.
I'm not a six-figure speaker.
Okay.
And I'm not going to be for a while because
right.
I'm only been I know where I am.
Okay.
I'm comfortable.
Okay.
I would like to make more. Uh-huh. I'm constantly trying to make more, but I also know where I am.
Right.
I don't think I'm not Simon Bailey, who's hey, I'm got people wanting me all over that, and people know who I am when they say Craig Price, they think I'm the serial killer from Rhode Island, which is a true story.
Okay.
So I'm in a different level where I have to. I can only turn down like some of the really embarrassing fees that's like I can't even spend the money on food.
Yeah.
On that thing, I have a limit. I have in my head a number, and so I'll try to start high and then work my way down because I just don't care.
Okay.
Yeah, well, some I do care about. No, they're great, and I'll kind of work with them.
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying that's actually not a bad strategy. Once I get busier, I can start turning that stuff down outright. Mm-hmm. But you're saying a good strategy is to, necessarily if you don't want to do it, just throw out the big number and maybe they'll take it.
Well, there's another strategy, which is I think who you're going after will change things an awful lot. You want to pay attention to who's paying you a lot, who's not paying you a lot, who's getting a lot out of working with you. You want to get feedback from people, so you want to go back to people maybe 6 months, a year later and say, what'd you get out of this? Was this worth it for you? Was it valuable? And the ones who found it the most valuable, you want to ask yourself the question, why is it valuable to them, and is there a way I can demonstrate that value before the sale? Because if you can do that, if you can say, listen, this is going to be worth X to you. This is why I think it's going to be worth X to you. If you can credibly say that it's going to be worth $500,000, you can probably charge a fee that you might consider a little embarrassing.
Oh, no, if I could prove that, yes.
Right. And there are clients for whom you have done that.
There may be.
Okay.
That's more ego for me. I haven't reconciled that. I'm sure I've helped a lot. They tell me that I helped them, so I'm not. But for me, it's hard for me to go back and go, hey, so put a number on it.
See, now that's the strategic thinking for you is two things. First of all, think about who would get that much out of working with you, and secondly, how do I find those people? And is there any evidence, get feedback from the market? Is there any evidence coming out of the market that some people value you more than others? And there are people who value you more than others.
Well, I appreciate that.
Okay.
It makes me feel good, even if it's coming from just some guy who's never hired me before. But it makes me feel good knowing that.
Right. But that's true for every speaker. Every speaker has to pay attention to that. And if you're one of those communications majors who's right out of school and you just started speaking on, giving book reports,
which is a high fee field, the book report, because you got third graders banging down your door trying to get you.
Right. Well, no, you do a book report on 7 Habits, or you do a book report on whatever the hot business book is this year.
Oh, jeez.
You do a book report on lean manufacturing or whatever. But the point is that you start doing that stuff, and you have to pay attention. You have to say, well, where am I really rocking? Where are people saying, like, oh, what you did, that was really good for us? And if you can just start to gravitate towards the people who actually value you the most, you can start to get your fees up to where they belong. And I think if you're not going to be getting great fees, you're really wasting your time as a speaker. You should go off and do a career you're going to love, because finding that spot is what it's really all about.
Right.
If you're really, to make it as a speaker, finding that spot, being the expert on that thing, writing about it, living it, loving it, speaking about it, that's where real success comes from.
Well, that sounds like a good ending point right there.
There you go.
Robert, I appreciate you being here, as always. If someone wants to find you, where can they find you online?
Well, you can go to www.robertbradford.com or simplifiedstrategy.com. And those are two. The Robert Bradford is about me and my speaking business mostly, and Simplified Strategy is my company and the other people who work with me in our seminars and that whole 9 yards.
And all the books?
And the books are all listed on there. Simplified Strategic Planning would be my best-selling book, and you can find that on Amazon.
Oh, at this late date, I think I'm going to strategize on getting a nap.
All right, that sounds good.
All right, thanks, Robert.
Thank you very much.
Well, that got a little more involved than I thought it would be, but I want to thank our guest, Robert Bradford, for being on the show. Don't forget, you can always find us at realitycheckpodcast.com. Sign up for the newsletter. Find us on iTunes. You can email me at Craig@speakercraigprice.com if you have any suggestions, questions, or comments. Other than that, we'll see you next week.